Hello and welcome to this video on human resources. So, a quick reminder that the Human Resources Department within a business is responsible for managing the workforce. And in this video, we're going to look at how the Human Resources Department might monitor the performance of the workforce with a view to improving competitiveness of the business in the future, getting that workforce to make the business perform better. So what is the link between staff performance and the competitiveness or the successfulness of a business? And remembering that HR, the Human Resources Department, are responsible for the staff performance. So if the HR performance is strong, then this will link well with efficiency. If the workers are more productive, that will improve efficiency, which should drive down unit costs, increasing profitability. If the workforce can handle large orders and are efficient, then this may increase the capacity that the business might have. Again, there might be a link with quality to do with training. And finally, customer service. Customer service may be improved if the HR performance is strong. So lots of ways we can link the performance of the workforce to various aspects of the business's performance and the overall business success. In this video, we need to understand how the Human Resources Department might monitor the performance of the workforce using 4 calculations: labour productivity, labour turnover, labour retention, and absenteeism. And we need to think about how the business might use these calculations, better understand them to make business decisions. So let's start off with productivity. Productivity, as we looked at last year, measures the relationship between inputs into the production process and the resultant output. So for example, output per worker or hour of labor, output per hour, output per machine, unit cost. In this video, we're going to focus on labor productivity, the output of the workforce. This is the first one that we need to take down. So labor productivity measures output per worker per time period. And we calculate it using the formula output per period, so the number of units produced in a given time period, divided by the average number of staff for that period. So for example, if the total output in a period is 100,000 units per week, and there are 2,000 workers on average for that week, what is the labor productivity? What is the output per worker? Well, it's simply 100,000 divided by 2,000, so 50 units per worker per week. And so the business can measure the performance of their workforce by looking at labor productivity. How efficiently are our workers producing products? Now, what might influence the level of productivity? Well, the level of training that the staff have will influence the level of productivity, how efficiently they can produce products in a given time period, how motivated the staff are, how keen they are to do the job, and different types of motivation that the business might use. The quality of the tools and machinery might have an impact on how much each worker can produce in a certain time period. Again, the quality of the raw materials that they're working with. So again, this might reduce the amount of time on wasted, rejected products, which has a negative impact on how much output each worker is producing. And finally, how the workforce is organized. So if it's a very efficient method of production, maybe using just-in-time or Kaizen techniques, then that organization of production will have an impact on how much each worker is able to produce over a certain time period. An important rule to remember is that higher labor productivity will have an impact on unit cost. So the higher the output per employee in a given time period, if we pay them for a particular time period, then the lower the labor cost per unit. So if I pay someone £10 to work in an hour and they can produce more units in that hour than someone else, they have a higher output per employee, then the cost, the labor cost, the cost I paid per unit would be lower. And if the cost per unit is lower, then I can increase my profits or charge a higher price and in general have a greater competitiveness. So there's a strong link between labor productivity and competitiveness. Okay, let's move on to our second measure of workforce performance, which is to do with labour turnover. So this measures the rate of change in a firm's labour force, the size of the labour force, by looking at how frequently staff leave. And we calculate this as follows. It is the number of staff leaving in a certain time period, divided by the average number of staff the business had in that period times 100. And we normally show labour turnover. It's a percentage. We normally show that over a period of a year. So for example, a car firm has 1,000 full-time employees in a year, and during the course of the year, 50 employees leave the company. What has been the rate of labour turnover? Well, 50 people left from our company of 1,000 people, so that's a 5% rate of labour turnover. During the course of the year, 5% of the workforce have left. So how can we interpret this figure, this calculation, and what influences it? Well, the type of business is the first thing to recognise. Some businesses will naturally have higher levels of staff turnover than others. So businesses that have seasonal staff, so holiday parks, theme parks, that sort of thing, will tend to have higher rates of labour turnover. Some businesses employ temporary staff only for a certain period of time, so catering things, that sort of stuff. Hotels, so again, they would experience a higher rate of labour turnover. Other businesses, maybe more stable businesses with full-time permanent staff, if they have a high level of labour turnover, then that would be possibly more worrying for the business. Again, pay and rewards might influence the rate at which staff leave, the working conditions, the opportunities for promotion, what's going on in the wider competitor action. Are people flocking to another competitor would rather go and work there? What is the standard of the recruitment that's going on? If the standard of recruitment is poor, you might see higher staff turnover because they can't hack it at work. So what might be the problems? What are the problems associated with high labour turnover? Well, one of the main ones is it's going to cost a lot. So if you keep losing staff and getting new staff, and you have to recruit and train all those new staff, that's going to increase the costs. There's going to be increased pressure on remaining staff to pick up the slack or to cover for the people that have left. It might disrupt the everyday workings of the business and the production process. And it's going to be hard to maintain quality standards and also things like customer relationships. If you've got a good working relationship with a customer and then your staff are leaving, the quality of that relationship might suffer. Okay, let's move on to our next one. Number 3, labour retention. So labour retention, similar to kind of labour turnover, but we're looking at the ability of the business to retain experienced members of staff. So keep a kind of a core workforce going. So it measures a firm's ability to keep its workforce within the business. Normally, we're talking for keeping them within the business for more than 1 year. So how do we calculate what percentage of the workforce have been with us for more than 1 year? How good are we at retaining our staff? We do this by calculating as follows. The number of employees serving for more than 1 year, or whatever period we choose, divided by the average number of staff, and it's a percentage again, so times 100. So for example, a business has a staff of 300. Of that staff, 230 have been with the business for more than a year. Experienced, happy staff that are with the business. How good is what percentage? What is the retention rate for the business? 230 over 300 times 100, 76.7% is the retention rate. Again, how might we interpret this or why this is important? Well, 100% retention is unrealistic, really. All businesses lose staff, either through retirement or illness. Some staff are just unsuitable for the role, and often businesses change strategy. Maybe they close certain locations or they want to release new products and go in a different direction, and that necessitates some change in staff. So all businesses lose some staff, but low retention rates may present a threat to a business if you're not very good at hanging on to your key people for any length of time. Why is that? Again, if you're not retaining many workers, there could be the cost of recruitment and training, which might be quite high. Often people have gained skills and they've gained information about how that business runs, particularly the experienced ones, so the people who have been there for a long amount of time. And if you're losing them, you've got low retention of your staff in general, then you could be losing that important information. And also they may be talented. They could hack at your business for a while. They obviously could do the job, but then they're suddenly leaving. Then that might indicate to you, actually, we can't cling on to anyone for more than a year. We're losing all this talent. Okay, number 4 is absenteeism. So this measures the proportion of the workforce who miss work in a given time period. So here we're trying to measure the performance of the workforce by saying, do they turn up? So we calculate this as the number of staff absent for a given time period divided by the total number of staff for that time period times 100. So for example, a car firm has 1,000 full-time employees, and of these, 40 employees did not turn up for work on a Friday. What is the absenteeism rate for that Friday? Well, the number of staff absent per time period is 40 on the Friday. Total number of staff that could have been there on a Friday was 1,000. So our absenteeism rate was 4%. 4% of the staff were absent on a Friday. Now, there is a slightly different way that we can calculate absenteeism. Rather than looking at just the numbers of staff, we can look at it in terms of days. So we can look at the number of days taken off for unauthorized absence during a particular period of time and divide it by the total number of days that should have been worked by the workforce over that period and look at that as a percentage. So let's have a look at a quick example. So Prior Pies Limited employs 20 staff. In 2016, the total available working days were 4,000. So that's the number of days that a member of staff could work times by the number of staff in the business. Unauthorized absence for 2016 was recorded at 560 days. So staff had taken 560 days off in total. So what was the rate of absenteeism for the year? Well, they were absent for 560 days. They could potentially have worked a total of 4,000 days worth of work. So the absenteeism rate here would be 14%. So absenteeism in the workplace, it can be a significant cost to business. It's estimated sickness absence costs UK business around £600 for each worker per year because they're not in and they're not doing the work. So there's a negative effect to businesses. What is key is to understand the reasons, whether they're genuine or not. Is it genuine sickness or bereavement or bullying or stress? Or is it a fact that some employers are playing the system? So as it would be important for the HR department to establish the reasons for it. And one of the ways I might do that is look at whether it can be predictable. Mondays or Fridays or the end of the shift pattern, or maybe during the summer holidays, are there higher levels of absenteeism, and the business can think about what they might do about it. Okay, so in this video, we've looked at 4 main calculations that we should have definitions for and be able to do those calculations. And we should also be able to interrogate these calculations, question how they've been put together and what conclusions the business might draw from them. That's it. Thank you very much.